Hello everybody, I'm Tony and I'm going to talk to you today about RSS. The pithy title I put on the wiki was RSS News, Blogs and Podcasts, but I'm going to cover a few more topics than that under the bracket of RSS. I should issue a warning before we start. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about mailing list archives, but I am going to mention a few buzzwords. So if you're buzzword allergic, I'm going to be using these buzzwords during these talk. You might want to step out and get some fresh air, but you're quite safe from this one at the bottom. All the others will feature at some point. So, what is RSS? Now, you might have seen it called any of these things up here, well, apart from the last one perhaps. They are all valid acronyms for RSS, but what it actually stands for is less important than what it actually does. And what RSS is about is getting information from one source to another source or another place in a format which means you can use it and do stuff with it. And we'll look at the way it can be reused and the way it gets from one place to the other as we go through. So, what is RSS used for? Well, used primarily to alert people to changes in new content, typically on a website. So it is useful for both frequently and infrequently updated sites. A lot of people assume that it's only useful for frequently updated sites. I use RSS on some of my friends' sites that perhaps only update them once every couple of months. But to save me checking it once every couple of months, or potentially missing content that has been put up there for a couple of months in between my checks, subscribe to an RSS feed. Via RSS I can find out within a day of them putting new content up there that it's up there, and to save me keep visiting the site. Frequently sites, obviously, it's fairly self-explanatory. So a site like BBC News, updated, every minute of every day, they claim, getting information from that site saves you again having to go back and revisit the site, and you can pick and choose the bits of information you're interested in from using RSS. It's also useful to generate up-to-date content for sites without intervention by taking RSS feeds from various people's sites. You can generate your site. So you could take RSS feeds from BBC News and from Planet Handslug, which is all based on RSS, for example, and put them together into one big site. Now, this is an easy way of maintaining your site and making it look fresh and having new items on it without you actually doing anything. So, for example, you had a company and you wanted to show that there's news items going on your site, you could include RSS feeds from a number of appropriate sources, or perhaps your corporate blogs if you have them, and put them on the front page of your site, always being up to date, always generating new content. It allows you to distribute content to a number of places. If I put an entry on my blog, which has an RSS feed, for example, that content then gets pulled almost effectively out to anybody who subscribes to my RSS feed. So there's a number of individual people. There's also a number of planets, which I'll talk a bit about in a minute, but basically have a lot of different blogs on them. So anybody who reads those planets, which my blog is on, also gets that content. So by doing one edit in one place, I can get my content out to a couple of hundred people, probably. Also, automated downloading of media. By using an RSS feed with special tags, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can allow people to automatically download, say, your latest song that you've created, or your latest podcast episode, or a screencast that you've made of your desktop, and have it saved to a specific place on the hard drive, traditionally onto a generic media player like an iPod, which is basically where podcasting comes into this category here. So where's it used? It's used all over the place. It's used in, for and by blogs. Blogs are very central to the RSS industry, as it were. News sites, lots of news sites have RSS feeds. Wikis have RSS feeds. Our wiki has an RSS feed. Media wikis have an RSS feed, and that allows you to see the changes to the wiki without going and visiting the site. So, for example, I subscribe to our Handslug wiki RSS feed, and I can see if there's an edit on there. And some wikis will include the differences in the edit in the content of the RSS feed, so I can see in my RSS client, and we'll look at those in a minute, what was added, what was removed. So I can see just from the RSS client whether it's a spam edit or not. And if it's a legitimate edit, I don't need to go and visit the page, because I can see right in my RSS client that it's a legitimate edit. If it is a spam edit, I then know I have to go and clean the spam and do whatever else I have to do using the admin tools. Galleries, specifically gallery.sourceforge.net, the main PHP gallery that's in use in lots and lots of places has an RSS feed. So I can see when my friend has uploaded new pictures of their baby without having to go and check on their gallery every few days. CMSs, content management systems, they can use RSS feeds, so they can take content from an RSS feed, but they also generally have one for its own content that spits it back out. So you can see if there's news items or articles posted on your favourite, well, often a software project, but not necessarily. Webcams, you can have an RSS feed that contains the latest picture from your webcam, so people will see that and they'll get the latest picture straight in their RSS client. More generic websites specifically, but also audio and video recordings. This talks about podcasts. So yes, distribute your content using audio and video recordings, RSS feed. Quote database, for example, which is the IRC quote database. If you really are that sad that you want to get every last quotation as soon as it goes onto the quote database, you can use the RSS feed for that. And aggregators. Aggregators are a special class of RSS client, and they allow you to take a number of different RSS feeds and view them in one place, and then often to produce an RSS feed of all of those in one place. So by subscribing to one RSS feed, you can get all of your RSS feeds in one place. And broadcatching, which is the most horribly buzzword compliant term I think I've come across while researching into this talk, which are torrents distributed by RSS. So if you're a very small project that perhaps doesn't have a huge amount of bandwidth funding available to you, and you want to distribute video clips, for example, which are quite bandwidth intensive, you can use RSS to distribute a .torrent file, a BitTorrent file, which will then, in the people's RSS clients, download the content automatically, also still make it available for other people to upload from you. It's a peer-to-peer mechanism. So it allows small projects to easily get lots of bandwidth via the method BitTorrent, all in one go without much user intervention. And as I see Andy shaking his head, it is horribly, horribly buzzword compliant. Right, so RSS. Is it just for geeks and angst-ridden teens? Well, some might argue that blogging is, but there are lots and lots of sites that use RSS, that give you RSS feeds. The biggest one, well, one of the most popular sites in the world is the BBC's website. And that has RSS feeds all over its news website, has had for years, but increasingly on their blog pages, lots of various journalists and personalities, the Radio 1 DJs have blogs and things like that. And they're doing more and more podcasts, which also have RSS feeds in them. So, big users of RSS. I found fairly randomly Thompson Holidays have an RSS feed which gives you the latest offers from their website. So if you're thinking of going on a holiday looking for a cheap offer, you could subscribe to their RSS feed for a couple of weeks and pick up the latest offers as they come, because you're getting that latest information straight from their site, in addition to some of their corporate blogs and other news. Newspapers. There are more that have RSS feeds than this, but these are just ones that I fairly high-profile ones I've picked up. So in this country, Guardian, The Independent, Daily Telegraph, even The Sun has an RSS feed. But the New York Times over in America was one of the first big papers to have an RSS feed, and they're seen pretty much as a turning point for the acceptance and adoption of RSS. When the New York Times put their RSS feed out there, RSS was very much seen to have arrived. Some of the Ajax apps, the modern Ajax apps, Flickr and Frapper, have RSS feeds for, Flickr for various photo streams and Frapper for updates and changes to the maps. And webcomics, if you're a fan of Dilbert or Garfield, and all the hundreds of other webcomics there are out there, a lot of those have RSS feeds. Not always put together by the originating site. Somebody else can make an RSS feed for your site if they want to. So you can get the latest comics without having to go and visit all the different sites what there are. And again, online magazines and journals, just two random examples, but there are plenty out there with RSS feeds, so you get the latest articles as they're posted up onto their site. So I'll have a quick look at RSS clients. There are lots, but I will look through the most popular. There's only about 3 or 4 to look at. Now, I'm never sure how to pronounce this, whether it's Liferia or Liferia. Different people seem to pronounce it different ways. But this is pretty much the default RSS client in GNOME. And most RSS clients follow this very familiar 3-panel view. If you're used to using Thunderbird or Outlook Express, it's a very similar sort of 3-panel view. You have a list of feeds on the left-hand side. So you can see here the feeds that I've got subscribed to, with our Hansslug ones at the top here, for example. A list of posts, read and unread post, unread being shown in bold, in the top window. This is obviously resizable, I've sized it up. And the content from the post shown in the window here. So it gives you an idea that with all these different feeds, with unread items marked in bold in the folders as well, it's easy to see what's going on, what's new in terms of the sites that you're interested in monitoring. Live3 also includes an unread items folder at the top, where I've scrolled down somewhat here, which allows you to see all of your unread items without having to flick through different folders. There's another one available for GNOME called YAR, which is yet another RSS reader, which is much smaller, sits in your system tray. Live3 does have a system tray icon, but YAR is just a system tray icon. So you click on it, and you can see new articles as they appear in this list, unread ones being shown with a red dot. When you click on article here, it opens up in your default web browser. So a slightly different mode of operation. I prefer to have everything right in the RSS client. It annoys me when I have to open a web browser to read something I could have read in my RSS client. But if you want low desktop furniture, this might be suitable for you. If you're a KDE user, there's Aggregator. Again, you'll notice it's very similar three-panel layout here. Feeds on the left, unread articles. It too has a system tray icon showing the number of unread stories. Live3 just shows is bold when there's unread stories. It doesn't show you a number like Aggregator does, but that's the default RSS client in KDE. If you're a console daemon, can't really see it under this light, but there's Raggle is a console RSS client. Again, three-panel view, left-hand side, articles and content, and that's actually Martin Wimpress's post on Ravencore, but you can't quite read it on the projector screen. Do you want to have another look? Sorry, Lizzie. It's there, trust me. If you're a macOS user, Mac has this really quite cool RSS screensaver. So it sort of just sits there and does all its glowy, throbby things that Macs do, with the content of RSS feeds that you've subscribed to just sort of floating up out of the ether at you. It also has a number of more traditional RSS clients. This one having a three-column view rather than a panel view, but basically the same idea: feeds, stories, content. I came across this while I was researching the project, and I was pretty much dead impressed with this straight away. A web-based RSS reader. It's all Ajax-y, so there's another buzzword. But very, very good implementation. Again, familiar three-panel layout, but you can click and drag stories around and things, and it doesn't take endless page loads to get the content because it's Ajax. Clicking on a story, it just updates the single panel without having to refresh the entire page. Why I was so impressed with this? Well, if you have an RSS feed, perhaps have two computers, you have your same RSS client running on both, you're going to get both the content appear on both. If you have one at work, for example, one at home, one upstairs, one downstairs, whatever. Having it on a web-based website, and this is an installable project, although the demo URL is at the top there, means you only have to read the stories once and go to one website. So I'm probably going to give this a go myself at some point. There are other options, of course. Some Windows ones at the bottom. I think the last two are free. IE7 is going to support RSS in the same way that Firefox does, natively out of the box. They're going to use the same icons as Firefox and everything. It's quite a win, that. But there is very little RSS support on Windows as it stands at the moment, unless you use another client. Mozilla Firefox and Thunderbird both have support for RSS, in addition to having extensions that allow you to have like a RSS client within your browser or within Thunderbird. Sage and NewsFox are two you could look at. Firefox has this live bookmarks concept, which basically allows you to bookmark a page, and it will check for updates on a periodic basis. Oh yeah, and you can input on a watch if you're that sad. So this guy's got RSS feeds going onto his watch. So how do you know what you can do with it, how you can get it? What is an RSS feed? Well, this horrible description is the way of describing how it works. The thing that contains the latest information on the thing you want people to know the latest information about. Yeah. So the RSS feed is what contains that information, basically. And it uses RSS to create it. So RSS is an XML format. It's text-based, which means it transfers pretty fast over a network. It's fairly simple structure, so it's easy to generate from a database or via a script. I know Ian's edited RSS by hand in the past. Slightly more tricky to do that, but it's still doable. And it's fetched via HTTP, so no funny firewall problems to get in the way. Pretty much if you've got web access, you can subscribe to RSS feeds. So no open ports or any other things like that. It's the closest you can get to a push technology using HTTP. A push technology would where a central server would ping out to clients to say there's a message or an update. By having regular checks of a given feed on a server from the clients, it's the closest thing to be able to push news stories out. They will check your feed and alert their user to any updates in that feed, any new entries or new stories. So we talked about RSS. What does it look like? Okay, so we're going to look at 3 RSS feeds and just look at the salient points in each of them. So a blog RSS feed might look a bit like this. XML tags are fairly straightforward. There's a title, which is the title for your RSS feed. So in this case, this is off my blog site. So the title is my blog. There's a link to the main site where you can view it. A description of the content of the feed. And then each individual story is within these item tags. And each individual story has a title, a link to where you can read the story if you want to, a date stamp for when it was published, and then the description tag contains the content of the post. So it's important that you have the URLs here as full URLs. Remember, somebody's viewing this in a client. It's not a relative URL, as if you're writing a web page. You can't use .. to indicate a directory above for something. It has to be a full URL. And that goes for content you put in your posts as well. If you put a link into a blog post, for example, to a picture, and you use .. to say you up a directory, and then in another directory is a file called myphoto.jpg, that's not going to work if somebody's viewing that on their computer, because they haven't got the same context as the web server does when it's serving the pages. The web server knows where to look for the picture, but viewing an RSS feed on a client somewhere else in the world isn't going to have access to that photo. So it has to be a full, absolute URL like this one here, so the full address of where the photo is stored. The publishing date stamp is very important for aggregation, because obviously it then knows when the article was published, which means if you have a number, if the aggregator has a number of feeds going in it, it can sort them out in date order, so it can tell you what order the post appeared in, just as our planet does. Including a full content in the description is a piece of etiquette. Personally, I prefer to read the whole article right in my RSS client, because I've got lots of other RSS feeds there. I want to read it in one place. I don't want to have to visit the website of each RSS feed to read the rest of the story, which may or may not be of interest to me. It's easy enough to just flick onto the next article if it's right there in my RSS client. I don't want to read it. There are people who will put the first 2 or 3 paragraphs perhaps in their RSS feed and then say click here to read more. There's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, but I prefer it personally if the whole article is in there. So, and then the item, so we have 2 items. You can obviously imagine this might continue with another 8 or 9 articles, and with closing tags just to close the XML off nicely. So a news site will be a very similar type of feed. They have got links to an article with a short summary up here about Jacques Villeneuve saying NASCAR is not a step down from Formula 1. And if you want to read the full article, you click on the link. So that's an example of the other way of doing it. They've also included an image in their RSS feed, which is just a little icon, a little glyph. Their corporate logo in this case. So you can do that using this image code, and that will appear on each of these stories that is in your feed. A podcast, they've got a few additional bits of information in the header of their feed. So they've, for example, put a last build date, which shows the last time the feed was changed. And they've also got a copyright string in there as well, which shows you what license the material is distributed under, and a language tag as well. But being a podcast, they have pretty much the same items. So they have a title, a link, a description, blah, blah, blah. Then they have this enclosure tag. which gives a URL to where you can download the podcast from, where you can download the file. And it just basically gives you the URL, it's line wrapped unfortunately, and the size of the file. And what happens then is when you have an enclosure tag in your RSS client, in most RSS clients, it will appear at the top here in a bar. In Liferia it's actually just this down arrow, and you click save and it downloads the audio file or the video file or whatever you've chosen to put in there straight away to your computer. You can also use RSS feeds with enclosure tags with a podcast client, where you're not so much interested in the content of the RSS feed, you just want to get the hold of the audio file and save it to a place on your computer. There are various podcasting clients that allow you to do that, but they rely on the presence of this enclosure tag. You can't just put the link. You can't just put the link in the content of the RSS feed. It has to be using the enclosure tag. So you're sold on the idea of RSS. How do you let people know about RSS? Well, there's this lovely RSS logo here, which is now the agreed logo for the format. So Internet Explorer 7 will use it, Firefox already uses it, I think Opera does as well, and there are lots of examples of this being used on websites. The BBC used to use these XML or RSS buttons, but they now exclusively use the big logo here. So it's becoming rapidly known as the shorthand for RSS. Again, showing the closest, well, to my mind, it shows the closest thing to being able to broadcast messages out to people. The XML and RSS tags you may still see on some places, which just, again, indicate that there's an RSS feed available. Often they're a link to click through to get to the RSS feed. And you can make people know about it using the headers in your HTML page as well. So having an alternate link application /RSS plus XML, title RSS, and then a link to where you get the RSS feed, makes your browser, so this is actually our Hampshire wiki, put the little RSS icon in the end of the navigation bar like that. Firefox will then let you bookmark that as a live bookmark. It also means if you point most RSS clients at the URL of just hampshire.org.uk, it will then follow the link through to the wiki, and it will extract the RSS feed from the header information, so you've only just to point at the website and it will pick up the feed and set it all up for you. So doing that is actually quite a very useful thing. But you'll be amazed to know how many sites you actually see have the little orange icon in the end of the navigation bar. So you've got the idea of how to set it up, you've got the idea of how it works. The sort of things you can do with it are, a very simple example is a planet. This is our planet. I've deliberately shrunk the text, but you can see the idea of there being a number of different people's feeds here. I think there's about 17, 18 people on the side there. So here's a couple of posts of Alan's, and there's a post from Adrian, there's a post from me, and there's a post from David Ramsden at the bottom there. And it's sorting those out by date, and it has an RSS feed of its own. So you can subscribe to the RSS feed for Planet Hanslug and get all of the content from the lug members who have got their blogs on there in one place. It's a really good way of finding out what people are up to, for example. And it goes on further than that. So you could see that by taking that content, you could do something else with it. You could make it available in some other format. You could extract the content and you can make web pages of it and all sorts of things. But yeah, so what's next? Well, if you like the idea of having things like BBC News or whichever sites, get the latest information from them, install one of the RSS clients we've talked about, add the feeds for your favourite sites. You should be able to just use the site URL if the orange logo is shown in the bar like we talked about. Set a sensible refresh value. The site may have rules about how often you can poll their RSS feed. Slashdot, for example, I think it has once an hour. If you do it more often than that, you might get firewalled. And I tend to think about, well, how often is this site going to be updated? If it's only updated once a month, I will set a daily check on it, because there's no point in checking it every hour if it's only going to be checked once. If it's only going to be updated about once a month. But you might want to do hourly for something like the BBC News site, for example, where there are going to be stories appearing every few minutes. And then basically just sit back and wait for your updates to come in, little things to pop up telling you there's the latest news story, and you can read it all right there in your client. So it's an effort-saving device, really, and it's pretty easy to set up once you've installed your RSS client and added a few feeds. Saves you checking all of those different news sites and missing out on information as well.